you did? Yeah. Let's go, Juicy. By going down for a meeting?
Not necessarily represent those of 990 WBOB and its management or its staff.
Yeah. Or you can come back over here when you come on or do whatever. Just check, make sure the video looks peachy keen if you want. Yeah.
The Shelter Arcade Bar, located at 111 Pine Street in Providence, Rhode Island, is your place to spend the evening.
It's already live, FYI.
Playing some vintage but memorable arcade and pinball games. They will find selection you're ever going to find. While you're there, check out the kitchen. It features delicious vegetables,
Oh.
bacon and banana peppers, and the Italian plum topped with tomato sauce, mushrooms, green and red peppers, and everything from apps to snaps to pizzas by the slice. It's the Shelter Arcade Bar.
I haven't played it yet. You
At Shelter
can play it after this. This is just a commercial break for everybody.
New England's premier electrical contractor is Econ Electrical Contractors, focused on providing high-quality service and customer satisfaction. We will do everything we can to meet your expectations. Licensed and insured in all of New England, Econ Electrical Contractors offers competitive quotes for residential and commercial work. Call Econ Electrical Contractors 401-297-1844. For service upgrades, call 401-297-1844. For pools, spas, PV modules, and more, call 401-297-1844. Or check out EconElectrical.net, leading the trade in quality workmanship. Econ Electrical Contractors. No job is too big or too small. Call today for a free estimate. 401-297-1844.
This is just too loud for me.
Improve or upgrade the electrical work in your home or business safely, affordably, and
you guys hear out there?
your satisfaction is guaranteed. Econ Electrical Contractors. 401-297-1844. This is 990 WBOB.
Hey, can you put my phones down?
The home of
Can you
internet
put these volume down?
And could you put that up, the speaker up, in his face? Are you recording?
990WBOB.com is an independent free media outlet. Good evening, and welcome to Demand the Truth. An hour in time designed to educate, expose injustice, and inspire action. Here is your host, Mr. Will Turbitt.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another worldwide broadcast of Demand the Truth. I'm your host, Will Turbitt, as I always am, 7 p.m. Mondays. Always go online, 990WBOB.com. Check out our past cast. A lot of new listeners to the show, so a lot of people don't know exactly where we're coming from with the show. Our whole job here is to give you a perspective that's legitimate and extremely well researched and documented, and we show you all the facts. I'm going to continue to do that today. And we give you an interesting outside-the-box perspective on world news, events, revolution, art, music, and the like. And we really want you to question things, question everything. And then once you question these things and make assessment of for yourself about what's going on, and when you can see the injustices and travesties that are occurring all around the world, and realize that you're in a privileged position just even sitting here in the United States, although we do have a lot of worldwide listeners as well, you're in a privileged position. I mean, if as long as your heart's beating, you don't have too many diseases, you got all your limbs, and you can eat, you're in a position to speak out. There's a lot of people that don't have that. Most of the world lives off $2 a day, and if you're in a position to take and just to hear this information, call my bluff. Don't say any of it's real. Go verify everything, every article in government document. Go check it out for yourself, and then when you see that it's real, and see that it's actually something going on and something that we need to take a hold of here, then you have to take action. And that's what this show is entirely about. Today is May 1st, Mayday. And Mayday, I'm going to start talking about that after I cover a couple articles. And then later on, in the second half of the show, we're going to have in-studio guests from a couple different outlets talking about stuff that we've never talked about here for sure. So it's going to be very interesting. I'll just leave it at that for now. But let me get into these articles before I talk about Mayday, because Mayday is a very important day going back thousands of years. People have been celebrating it, and it's a day that keeps coming up and up again and again with communism and a couple other odd places. But let's go to this first article that I wanted to discuss. This is several days ago. This is April 24th. This was a day or two after the last show, but I wanted to cover it here. I just wanted to talk about it briefly. The name of the article here is Saudi Arabia elected to UN's Women's Council despite gender inequality in kingdom, and that's ABC Australia, ABC News out of Australia, not our ABC. And this is one of many headlines. You can just search it. But Saudi Arabia was not only the head of the Human Rights Council, but also the Women's Council. And this ABC News article actually is just really very tame when saying Saudi Arabia elected to UN's Women's Council despite gender inequality in kingdom. It's more like saying Saudi Arabia. Now there's different types of Christians. Not everybody's the Westboro Baptist Church where they protest funerals and says God hates fags and go out and really antagonize people and do really hurtful things. And then there's types of Christians that will go out of their way to feed the homeless and do what they can for the poor. So just like there's every type of Christian, there's every type of Muslim, every type of Buddhist, and so on and so forth. Anyways, particularly in Saudi Arabia, it's up there with North Korea regularly. It's either number one or number two of the worst atrocities, most inhumane treatment of their people. And in Saudi Arabia, if you're gay, you get beheaded or pushed off a building. In Saudi Arabia, if you're a woman, you cannot leave the house unless you have a male chaperone. And even when you do, you have to be covered in a complete head to toe with only depending on who you are, a small portion of your face, if that, allowed. If you try to drive, you will be stoned to death. If even in some cases recently there was a woman who was raped, and because she was raped, she was not faithful to her husband, and then she was put to death. So in probably the most backwards place as far as women's rights, Saudi Arabia has now been elected, after they had been elected to the Human Rights Council, for the UN's Women's Council. Now how could this possibly happen? Why would this happen? Now when we were given the United Nations, which like I've documented in this show before, was given to us by the Rockefeller family. The plot of land that the United Nations is located on in New York City was a donation by the Rockefeller family. The Rockefeller family and their robber baron friends put all their buddies in. They had talked about this before, after, and met privately and illegally with the State Department on record in the White House to set up the war and the post-World War afterwards. Alger Hiss, the first Secretary General of the United Nations, was a spy, and the whole idea of the United Nations was to bring people together from all over the world to prevent war. We had just suffered the Second World War. We were tired of millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of innocent young men and women dying and having entire cultures destroyed for what? And as I've proven to you on this show, and I've showed you all the details, there's the same group of bankers, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, Jacob Schiff, the Warburgs, J.P. Morgan, they all openly, on record, you can look it up, it's a matter of historical fact, openly financed both sides of World War I and World War II, and they created, from my opinion, these global bodies to manage everybody, to have a framework of this type of thing. And the whole idea told to us slaves is that, oh yeah, the United Nations is going to come in and they're going to stop war. And we're going to finally put an end to war. There's been so many deaths now. We're going to finally put an end to war with the United Nations because here's going to be a body that everybody can talk to each other. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you put a group of people together? Where here in the United States, idealistically, although we do not live under it currently, we have a constitutional republic where our rights are guaranteed and they're inalienable and given to us under God and can't be taken or given from any other government. When you have somewhere like North Korea where they have to bow to their dictator, or Saudi Arabia where if you're a woman and you do something that they don't like, you're killed. So we have certain rights. So what do you think is going to happen when you take a big room and you sit down, America, which has all these supposed freedoms, which we're losing rapidly generation after generation, and you put them in a room with dictators, royalty, warlords? Do you think you're going to come out with democracy or republic or a consensus on anything? No. And so, as the ultimate of all irony, right now, the head of the UN Human Rights Council and the Women's Council are the number one or number two over the last several years country, Saudi Arabia, who has been destroying women and women's rights and human rights in general, not just women, all over the place. So my question to you is, now that you know this, and now that you know that the United Nations not only is completely on its own head, it also, we've had more wars since the inception of the United Nations since before. It's been almost every year we've been in constant military action, from Korea to Kosovo, and continually since then. You guys can Google UN war crimes, UN sex traffickers. These people, they say they're peacekeepers, but they're just troops just like anybody else, and they commit war crimes and atrocities just like anybody else, but they're doing it on a governmental body. Another thing that I just briefly want to mention here is, a lot of people say, you know, and this is something that I brought up with the debate with Donald Trimmer, David Trimmer, and I was glad he brought this up. He said, "Well, you talk about the mainstream news as being controlled, but yet you quote them sometimes." And I said, yes, I always quote the mainstream news, because when they're admitting something, you want to hear it. And also, like I said to him, is there are stories and there are good journalists, but those stories, like the Bin Laden family and their ties to the Bush family, those stories are real and they're legitimate, but they're not the ones that are put in the 24-hour news cycle and are inundated in your head over and over and over and over again like weapons of mass destruction. Imagine what kind of world we'd be living in if, instead of hearing about weapons of mass destruction and terrorists, if we were like Bush-Bin Laden connection, it'd be completely different. So it's really what stories they continue to drum out. So this is just another thing, and this is talking about fake news. And even in the fake news, and this is fake news is something I've mentioned this on the show before, is I've had a playlist well before the idea of fake news came out on my YouTube channel called Fake News. And it has all these clips of CNN and BBC and these other people legitimately in front of green screens and in front of everything. Just Google Charles Jaco to start. But these people, Anderson Cooper, these people have manufactured news, and I've talked about it. It's open. It's been declassified under Operation Mockingbird in the 60s, where they paid over $1 billion worth of today's money to buy off all the journalists. In 2014, as part of the NDAA, Obama, I've read this one on air. He made it legitimate for the CIA, which is not allowed to operate on this soil, to propagandize Americans. And I've shown you that all of the media outlets in this country are run by the same 6 mega corporations, and I've told you those are run by the same people and the generations afterwards who believe in the same ideology of keeping the rich rich and consolidating power. So they do let it slip every once in a while. And here's another occasion of this. And this is from the dailymail.com. This is from several years ago. I just wanted to point this out because I could do an entire show and have done an entire show about fake news and what is fake news, and open quotes by these people where, like I said, in David Rockefeller's autobiography, he talks about meeting William Paley, who at the time was the head of the psychological warfare department for the Army, who would go on to found CBS. So these people have fake things on record in front of green screen a bunch of times. Check out Charles Jaco. But anyways, here's the article from the Daily Mail. Bizarre moment, CNN anchors unsuccessfully tried to pretend they're not in the same parking lot. Now, this is from May 8th, 2013, and this is obviously from a while ago. I'm going to read that headline to you one more time. It's bizarre moment, CNN anchors unsuccessfully try to pretend that they are not in the same parking lot. And they take you through the video feed here where they're actually, it's Nancy Grace is one of them, and Ashley Banfield was the other name of the correspondent. They pretended like they were in 2 different areas, but they were in fact in the same parking lot. Just another example of how the mainstream news is manipulated and controlled and selling you a narrative. They're not selling you the truth, and like I've said a bunch of times, until you do your own research on this stuff and really find out what's going on, you're going to be anybody's sucker. So May 1st, like I said, is Mayday. It's been a day that people have been celebrating for a very long time for a number of reasons, going back thousands of years. I'm not going to go quite back that far due to instances of brevity, but before we get it there, I'd like to do an interesting segue. And I'm actually going to get to this article right after the break because we're coming up on a break. But I'm a person who I used to play sports. I used to coach sports at the Boys and Girls Club. And I still like to play sports. I still like to play basketball. Football, although I'm not trying to play tackle anymore. It's getting a little crazy. I'm becoming an OG at that. But as far as sports, I love sports. However, I don't, and there's a bunch of people out there that do stuff, and they're part of the revolution and spread truth and love, and they still enjoy sports. However, there are some people that are just inundated with sports and can't do anything without checking their fantasy, and that's what their whole life is about. So I don't get into sports at all. And even with the whole Aaron Hernandez thing last week, I was going to bring it up and say, you know, everyone in the world's talking about Aaron Hernandez, but nobody's talking about, like, everyone's tripping out over Aaron Hernandez. Oh, my God, Aaron Hernandez killed himself, or supposedly, or what happened, this and that. Everyone's talking about that, but nobody gives a damn about the 1.3 million innocent women and children that we murdered in Iraq over weapons of mass destruction, which was a total lie and a fabrication. Nobody cares about the innocent children, the 400,000 children every year that are getting trafficked and go missing every single year and we can't find them. Nobody cares about the innocent kids that Bayer on purpose put the HIV virus in. Nobody cares about that stuff, but we all worship this guy, Aaron Hernandez. But on the other side of the break, I actually am going to cover Aaron Hernandez because it ties in perfectly to Mayday. And it's like, how does Aaron Hernandez tie into Mayday? Well, you don't know. So that's why you have to stay tuned on the other side of the break. In the meantime, follow me at Twitter. It's at Will_Turbitt, Turbitt, YouTube /Demand the Truth. And stay tuned. We got a big guest coming up in studio today. We're going to have some solutions, a lot of outside-the-box thinking. And I'm going to break down Mayday and what Mayday is really, truly about. And also, while the break is going on, go to 990wbob.com, check out Demand the Truth, check out our past cast, and also scroll some of the news articles there. Because I'll tell you what, whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, whether it's what's trending, or whether it's actual news articles, you're not going to get the perspective like you get from 990wbob.com. You have original articles every single day. Check that out. We'll be right back from the break. Demand the Truth. Stay tuned.
Whether you notice or not.
Is there certain things you're gonna bring up? What are you gonna talk about?
Guy does his job.
I'm like, come on.
He must be the other guy.
Oh, I want to talk. We'll talk about.
You give me a tuber, I'll get you some.
We'll talk about anything that you want to. We'll talk about what you're doing and what we're doing with the group. We'll talk about the ECYF. We'll talk about Sal. We'll talk about solutions. We'll just talk about. I'm gonna just spitball
Every
with you a
time I
little
meet
bit too.
somebody here, the big question is, do I know you? Certainly don't.
You can bring up anything you want too.
I want to be careful. I don't want to tell them like certain strategies.
Well, that's fine, but you're live streaming right now, so don't tell anybody that you can.
Whenever you like, right here on the home for everything you need.
We're gonna talk about actually. One of the things I want to talk about is libertarianism and anarchy too, because we're talking. I'm going to be getting into communism and the Illuminati and
detailed profiles of
and
CES MMA fighters. Catch up on
all right,
can
you bring it
articles,
up? Okay,
read
write it down
about
and bring it
upcoming
up.
fights, purchase tickets, even check out their lovely ring card models and more. The leading MMA showcase in the Northeast is CES MMA, featuring the best combatants at the best venues. Stay connected and feel the power. CESMMA.com with both class and combat sports. The Shelter Arcade Bar, located at 111 Dyke Street in Providence, Rhode Island, is your place to spend the evening. Sip on some craft brews, playing some vintage but memorable arcade and pinball games. They have the finest selection anywhere you're ever going to find. While you're there, check out the kitchen. It features delicious specialty pizzas,
And we're going to shout out right down Mayday Street Cafe too.
and banana peppers, and the Italian
shout out
top
Mayday Street
tomato
Cafe.
sauce, mushrooms, green and red peppers. They have everything from apps to snaps to pizzas by the slice. It's the Shelter Arcade Bar, a way to spend your night. Located at 111 Dyke Street in Providence, Rhode Island. Follow them on Twitter today for hours of information and more at Shelter Arcade Bar. For all of your plumbing and heating needs in the Ocean State, you need to make only one call.
Those on the podcast, I'm going to talk about Robin Hooding, cell phone one, it's a phone app, and encrypted currency.
Our customers' needs are of the utmost importance. We're dedicated to providing quality work in a timely manner. Econ Electrical, your one-stop service call for residential, pools and spas, PV modules, commercial, service upgrades, and generator backup. Call Econ Electrical today for your free quote. 401-297-1844. Mention 990wbob.com and enjoy the savings. That's Econ Electrical. 401-297-1844.
You're listening to www.bob.com. Renegade Radio.
Unique New York. Unique New York. Welcome back from break. Demand the Truth. Your host, Will Turbitt, at Will_Turbitt, Turbitt. Check me out on Facebook, Will Turbitt, and YouTube.com/Demand the Truth. Coming back from break. Before the break, I was covering a few articles and also talking about Aaron Hernandez and how, everybody cares about Aaron Hernandez who died, but nobody cares about the 500,000 Iraqi children that Madeleine Albright didn't care that she killed with her sanctions, or the 1.3 million innocent Iraqi women and children, and so on and so forth. They don't care about that, but they care about the football star. But I'm going to read you an article that's going to perfectly segue. I'm taking some lessons from Tyler from Psycho Sports on segueing, so I'm working on it. You guys can give me some feedback in the comments. But here's the article here. It's details of Aaron Hernandez suicide emerged. This is from Yahoo News, and this is April 30th, 2017, so yesterday. And so I'm just going to read you the first couple paragraphs. If you're interested, you can check it out a little bit more. But it says, former NFL star Aaron Hernandez used his own blood to draw, quote, odd symbols on his prison wall before committing suicide, a new report claimed Saturday. The 27-year-old, who was jailed for life without parole for the 2013 murder of Odin Lloyd, was found hanging from his prison cell window April 19th at the Sousa Barandowski Correctional Center in Shirley, Massachusetts. According to WCVB-TV, which had earlier claimed that Hernandez wrote John 3:16 on his forehead in a red marker before he died, the American football tight end wrote Illuminati in block letters along the wall with an unfinished pyramid and the all-seeing eye of God, similar to the illustration on the back of the $1 bill. Another symbol he reportedly drew was an oval with rays coming from its edges. So what the hell is going on there? Why is this football person obsessed with the Illuminati? And it segues nicely into today. May 1st is not only the day that communism is famous for, but also going back thousands of years before that. Most people know it as a day for communism. There's marches all across for communism in the United States, and we're definitely going to talk about that, and I'm going to bring it up with our guest as well. But one of the interesting things about that is the Illuminati actually was created on May 1st, 1776. And the Illuminati, and this is something I haven't really talked about. If you hear me talking about people in the elite sectors of power, whether it be in geopolitics, banking, marketing, military-industrial complex, or the like, I always provide some type of proof. I'll call them a robber baron, a member of the elite, or I'll just say, I'll name the darn person and tell you exactly what they think in their own books, their own writings, their own documents, and so forth. So with this Illuminati, I don't use that word. I think the Illuminati is a polarizing negative word because the Illuminati now, when people hear Illuminati, they're like, oh yeah, what do you mean Jay-Z and Rihanna's in the Illuminati and all this other stuff, and it's kind of like a silly joke to people. So I don't use that word, and there may be an actual organization existing today under the banner of the Illuminati, but I can't prove that. And my entire intention of this show is to go what I can prove. Whether they call themselves the Illuminati or not, there is a small elite group of people that are trying to run things. However, there are other power sectors around the world. So that having been said, most people may not know this, but there was an actual historical organization, the Bavarian Illuminati, which was created on May 1st, 1776 in Ingolstadt, Germany, by Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jesuit priest. And he created it with the financing of none other than Lord Rothschild, a name that comes up over and over and over again. And they collected people, and they took some of the biggest names, like I said, in finance and geopolitics. And there was even books written about it at the time, Proofs of a Conspiracy by John Robeson, which is free for download on Google Books. I have it on my phone. And even George Washington the father of our country in his own writings, which are cataloged in the Library of Congress and have also been covered in books and by the History Channel. He has a correspondence with an individual who I can't recall his name, but it's entered into the Library of Congress, and he's the guy saying to George Washington, "Hey, do you know what's going on? Are you aware of what's going on with the Illuminati?" And George Washington says something to the effect like, "Doubt it not. None are more aware of their conspiracy than I," and stuff like that. So there was an actual historical organization, and very interestingly enough, some people would call it the hand of God or evolution or whatever you want to call it, but in 1793, there was a courier going on horseback and sending the plans of the Bavarian Illuminati to another one of their co-conspirators when he was struck by lightning, and his documents were found out, and that's how we actually found out there was a group called the Illuminati. If it wasn't for that strike of lightning, then who knows? Although I guess the strike of lightning is also associated with Harry Potter and Satan too, so whatever your particular take on that is, I'm not sure. But that happened, and supposedly in 1793 this group came to a halt, and now there's people that say that group continues to exist and others that say it doesn't. All I go with is what I can prove. I'll give you the books Tragedy and Hope, the Anglo-American Establishment. I will give you the Technotronic Era, David Rockefeller's memoirs, Edward Bernays quotes, George Soros quotes, Aldous Huxley quotes, Bertrand Russell quotes from their own mind, from their own mouths and their own books. So I'm just going with everything that I can prove, but I did want to bring that up. But going to communism. Now, we're living in a world today where it's very strange. We're at the same time as you have the right-wing people in the Trump presidency being criticized for being too close to the former communists, and then you have the left-wing embracing the communist ideology. So we're at a very weird particular stance here in the United States, and with the rise of Bernie Sanders and a lot of the somewhat leftist politicians, we've seen the United States slowly creep or take giant marches towards the left. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why communism is bad, but last night I reread the Communist Manifesto, and I'm not going to obviously read the whole thing. I wouldn't have the time to do that. But they are the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and that's in the second chapter. And it's not a very long document. It's just like a pamphlet. You can find it for free online. It's in any language that you prefer. And it's by Karl Marx. And I'm going to go over a few of those. I'm going to go over, coming up on a break here. Well, I'll go over one right before we go to the break. The first one is, number one, the abolition of private property in land and application of all rents to land to public purpose. So basically taking over all private property. So your house is no longer your house, your business is no longer your business, your daycare is no longer your daycare. It all goes up to the state. And the abolition of private property has happened right here in the United States under eminent domain, the government buying up all the public parks, and even having to pay taxes on the money that you've already purchased. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I got time to do one more before we go to the break. Number two, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. And that's exactly what I've been talking about, the Federal Reserve and the income tax that we got in 1913, written by the Rockefellers, signed into legislation by the powerful Rhode Island Senator Nelson Aldrich, who would marry into the Rockefeller family, and even Nelson Aldrich, former Vice President of the United States, Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, took his middle name. And we can go on, and we're going to go on a little bit with our guest who's going to be joining me on the other side of the break, Joe Orga from Community Response, and also he's out there from the Open Minds Alliance and the DCYF Truth Group. This guy just does it all. We're going to be in studio with him in just a minute. Before we go to break, check me out at Twitter at Will_Turbitt, Facebook Will Turbitt, and also check me out YouTube/Demand the Truth. And like I said, go listen to our past cast. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff because I always think I have so much time and then the breaks come up. So we got a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to have Joe a co-pilot with me so we can cover some of this stuff and then get into what he's doing. So stay tuned. Demand the Truth. We'll be right back after the break. Share this with your friends, or else. Just kidding, guys. Peace. But seriously, do it. Or else. Just kidding.
over here.
You want to pop a squad over here? Or
What
you
else
want
you
to
have to-
it's up to you.
No, I'll just do it. What else you have to record?
You see, for years
What else you
now,
have to
whenever I'm
say?
shopping
What else you have to bring
I
up?
always visit my boys
I
over
want to
at
just
King's
talk
Boulevard.
about. I really
Located 3
wanted to talk about
lanes
each of the 10 planks of the.
and historic Bristol, Rhode Island.
I just want to cover one more thing about. We can talk. We'll talk. Let's talk about why communism is bad. First of all, I'm going to ask you why communism. I'm going to talk about a little bit. I'm going to sum up the communism really quickly. Talk about communism bad. Then talk about the answer being libertarianism or anarchy, and then I can jump to you and ask you those things that are on your mind. Okay. And if we got extra time, we can talk about Trump, the first 100 days of Trump, and get his ass.
Head on over to CES
I know he's done a couple good things. He has done a few good things.
Detailed
But
profiles of CES MMA fighters.
Not
Catch up
happy
on
he's going
past
after
bouts. Read about
Science,
upcoming
okay.
fights. Purchase tickets.
Idiots.
Even check out their
But what do you
lovely
expect?
ring
He's the
card
president.
models and more.
why we have
The
to go
MMA
Ron
showcase
Paul,
in the
Cocaine,
Northeast is CES
be ourselves,
MMA.
anarchy,
Featuring
no
best
leaders.
combatants at the best venues. Stay connected and feel the power. CESMMA.com.
What? No different. He's better rhetoric to the side that was the last complaining.
Brought to you by feedthepig.org.
I mean, like I said, he did
Well,
kill
I
the
finally
TPP, he
did.
did
I
stop
improved
the
my credit
Republicans
score.
from doing the
You're
ethics
kidding,
thing.
right?
The ethics thing was pretty
It
good.
was already dead. They finally brought it back up just to say, oh, Trump did it.
No, Trump did that with an executive order.
I know, but what I'm saying is
Oh yeah, it
that
could all
maybe
be
Obama
planned.
left it in
And as a
there.
matter of fact, there's the Paul Ryan is floating the idea that the TTIP is now a good idea, and that could be on Trump's table any minute. And Trump was like, "Oh, this actually is a good deal," and he signs it like something I can't say on or even off the radio right now.
Start using a budget.
It's got several adjectives I want to call that guy right now. But we haven't had a good president since
Some goals.
me,
Listen, I
Kennedy.
knew that we'd have our
Kennedy was
differences,
good.
but I was hoping
Ever?
to involve a little more
Grover
scandal.
Cleveland was
When it comes
decent.
to financial stability,
Kennedy
don't get
was
left
I.
behind. Get tools and tips for
I bet
saving
there
at
was a lot of people that were like,
This message
wait, who
brought
are
to you
these
by the
people
American
in
Institute of
Washington?
CPAs and the Ad Council.
Is that a place?
Hey, you, Joe Rhode
It is a
Island,
place.
looking for a night out? Look no further.
They even named the president after that
Arcade
place.
Bar in
Very
Olean.
historic.
That's
Oh,
right,
he's
Olean,
president.
111 Dyke Street.
Well, it was a place.
He was one of those like leader guys.
While taking
He's one of those,
rejoicing vintage
authoritarians.
coin-op video games, everything that you
Oh,
love,
I'm being
from
depressed.
to Pac-Man to Pinball and
the
back,
first one
all
to
at
figure.
Shelter Arcade Bar, located at 111 Dyke Street in Providence, Rhode Island. While you're there, have yourself a bite to eat. They feature a terrific menu from everything from pizza buns, slices to specialty stuff like the Angry Bird, buffalo sauce, buffalo
All right, I'm gonna get into
chicken,
this, 'cause don't you have a
banana
call?
peppers, you name it. It's
thought you had a
apps,
call.
it's snacks, they got it all. The
Oh.
Shelter Arcade
I mean, I could. I was gonna like. I mean, the last segment's not. I mean, honestly, quite frankly, the last segment's not long enough for me to have that segment. And I mean, honestly, I could spend 3 days on the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto versus Thank you for joining us on the other side of the break. 990WBOB.com. Demand the Truth. Your host, Will Turbitt, at Will_Turbitt on Twitter, Facebook, Will Turbitt, YouTube/Demand the Truth. On the other side of the break, I was talking about how Mayday is renowned for communism and how there's communists all over the world basically protesting and rallying today. And I was telling you, I'm just going to briefly sum it up, and I'm going to talk to our guest too. We have Joe Orga here from Community Response Rhode Island and a number of other groups, and I'm going to let him talk about that too. But I also wanted to just say a couple more points quickly on communism, because I could literally spend the whole day. I intend to spend an entire show on the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto versus the 10 Bill of Rights in the United States. Draw comparisons and parallels, because I think it's very, very important. You can actually just Google that as a Google image. I mean, it's obviously not going to be as in-depth as like a 3-hour show. But anyways, communism is really bad, and 80 million people just in the last century alone have died from it. They want you to give up all your rights, all your property, and all your freedoms. And I want you guys to take a look at this political cartoon. It's called Delighted, and you're gonna have to Google this one. I know you're gonna have to get those fingers out, but it's by Robert Minor, Minor, and it appeared in the St. Louis Dispatch in 1911, and it's a political cartoon. It shows Karl Marx, who was one of the progenitors of communism, surrounded by enthusiastic Wall Street financiers. Morgan partner George Perkins, that's J.P. Morgan himself, John Ryan of National City Bank, John D. Rockefeller, and Andrew Carnegie. So and they're all shaking his hands and welcoming him and financing him, because the truth of the matter is, communism, which fought America and had the Cold War all the way up to the late 80s, early 90s, was financed by these same very elite jerks. On record. It's a matter of historical fact. I'm not saying anything crazy here. I'm just pointing out things that are factual, just nobody's ever told you before. These are all facts. Take a look at the political cartoon, and it shows that communism, I mean, there's books written about it, Wall Street and the Rise of the Bolsheviks, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. So you see all of that there. More proof. They killed 80 million people over last century alone. And David Rockefeller, he doesn't do a lot of writing, but he did write an op-ed in the New York Times when Mao died, and he was like, oh, Mao was so awesome and cool, and I'm glad he killed so many of his own people, and Stalin was good. And I have Joe Orga here, and I have a question for you. In what country has socialism, communism, or any other variant actually been successful in?
None.
Okay, yeah, I don't understand why there's people in the United States on college campuses with their iPhones, their Louis Vuitton bags, their backpacks, and they've got hammer and sickle shirts all over them, and yet they don't want to go live in North Korea, they don't want to go live in Venezuela. So what's the appeal?
Well, I like to say that, your ideal of government is so good, or your philosophy is so good, that you have to force it on people.
Yeah, it's forced. I mean, it's even worse than the force we're living under. Last couple things I'll say, there's some pretty racist quotes also in the Communist Manifesto, talking about people as being barbarian and semi-barbarian according to them in their class structure. But one of the things we love to talk about, and that's one of the reasons that I got you on today, before we talk about the stuff that you want to get into, pardon me, is what are some of the solutions? My idea is libertarianism or anarchy as opposed to this, because it seems like in the United States and across the world, when the government screws them, takes their tax money, finances genocide, war, torture, and rape, they're like, give the government more power. We need more government and more money. Well, do you think that's a necessary answer? Or if not, what is your answer to socialism or large government?
Well, we could talk about it all day, but until people actually do something, and I'm not talking about passing legislation, but actually going out in the streets and helping people, or, whatever it takes to stifle the government from making a profit off of it, and it keeps the money in your pocket, that's what we should be looking toward. And maybe try to avoid government entirely and working outside of it in other markets,
Well, how could you possibly do that? Give me an example of that.
Well, encrypted currency is a way that not only can you, not invest into the U.S. dollar, but you can also, which funds war, right? And so you don't have to use that, and you can use alternative or encrypted currencies such as like Bitcoin or Monero, Dogecoin. There's some joke ones, but they're all still viable, and they have value. People take value in these things, just like gold,
so now,
for instance.
There's a lot of people listening. We have a very diverse cross-section of listeners from internet all over the world, all age groups. What does encrypted mean?
Means that it's very hard for someone else to see what's happening.
So what does that mean, what's happening?
So, well, not just what's happening, but where it's happening. So,
are you talking about the transactions?
Yeah, so what happens is that when you make a purchase with these encrypted currencies, is that you and the person that you're trying to do a transaction with, say you want to purchase something online, you provide a code, and that code changes because you're taking some of the value out of it to buy something, and then that transaction is confirmed with the people that are running servers, which is called mining, and they confirm those transactions. They get a very small portion of that transfer, but it's so minuscule it rounds off, it doesn't even matter. Like if you were to retransfer that back into dollars, you probably would never even see a difference if it's anything a cent or two off, right? So what you're doing is you're creating these transactions, it's encrypted, no one can see where they're coming from, but people are confirming it. It happens about 50 times on every transaction. So there's 50 people out there with servers confirming it.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
people,
so,
yeah.
And the transaction doesn't go through until it's approved, so it's really solid. There is some flaws in it, and it's all about trust. You got to know who you're trusting and how you deal with your Bitcoin, because you could write it down on a piece of paper, take a plane, go to another country, and then put it back into your digital wallet, and nobody would be the wiser. So it's easy to to do things in this world now, and even states are having trouble writing law about it because it's so difficult. But
Well, no, that's a great point because to what you were saying earlier, as far as operating outside of these systems of control, that's a great way of doing it. What are some other ways of doing it? As far as I know, one of the ones I know you have a few things that you want to talk about as far as that too. One of the things that you told me a while ago, because Joe is also a member of the Open Minds Alliance, and I wanted to tell you guys a couple things too before I give Joe the floor to answer that question and take the floor for some other points too. Is first of all, the Open Minds Alliance, like I've mentioned on the air before, is a group of us that coalesced about last year, and I've been doing the revolution now for about 10 years and trying to fight the system and stop injustice and fight for the innocent now for about 10 years. And I went on Twitter, Facebook, protest, real life, and I met with a bunch of different people, finally got them all together for meetings. We've been meeting every Sunday at 7 p.m. to do things, and we've raised money for donations. We're on our second homeless drive. We got a lot of ideas cooking, and Joe's a part of that. We're going to be having that at 7 p.m. this Sunday at Meeting Street Cafe, which is right off of Thayer Street in Providence. Meeting Street Cafe at 7 p.m. That's BYOB. They got delicious food there. We're going to be hanging out and talking about doing awesome stuff. And the other thing that we're going to be doing, Joe and I, tomorrow also at 6 p.m. at the George Wiley Center, it's something we've been doing now for several weeks. We're going to be meeting up with the people that do DCYF reform. And it's some very tragic stories of children getting taken away and separated, and there's bounties on children's head. We're going to have a protest for that. That's May 10th, 8:30 in the morning. So please show your support for that. Call in, come by and show your support and help us build some signs and meet with these people and get some free black and white cookies because it's delicious and they got pastelitos as always. And you're listening to 990WBOB.com. Your host, Will Turbitt. I'm here with Joe Orga. And before that long protracted break, one of the things that you told me was another way to operate outside of the system and not be taxed and have your tax money help go to finance genocide, war, and torture would be growing your own food and bartering and trading with that. Isn't that correct?
well, sure. I mean, I actually wouldn't sell the food that I grow. I'd rather give it away, or maybe a trade. But
That sounds kind of communist to me.
oh no. Well,
I'm
see,
just
I
kidding.
want to
I'm teasing you.
make a point real quick about socialism and communism. It does work, but not on a government scale, and it has to be in consent.
Here's the
yeah, I mean, this is a small scale neighborhood style. Like respect your neighbor and help your neighbor. That's what it's all about. That's not communism.
I think personally that communism and socialism are ideal. I think that if human nature wasn't, I mean, I don't want to say that human nature is flawed. I'm not saying that we are born with original sin or anything like that. But unfortunately, ever since humans have existed, there have been, unfortunately, bad people, murderers, and people that want to get into control. And the problem is, socialism and communism works out best if we could all get along and share. But every time there's no default blocks for a jerk, an a-hole, to get into power and just kill 80 million people. And that's what happens every single time is you run out of other people's money, people end up starving to death, there's death camps, people end up because there's no fail-safe on letting a dictator get into things. I mean, it would be great if, the biblical King David came down and even he was a flawed man and had some guy put to death. So we really can't trust anybody with socialism or communism at this point, And that's the whole point of anarchy and libertarianism, which you helped me discover is we can either say, here, government, you take care of morality, you take care of feeding us, you take care of setting things up, or we can take our own responsibility and do it ourselves.
Right, because government assumes that we're born into it. I mean, you got to show me the social contract that I signed, and my baby footprints don't count.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can find other avenues to work outside of it because they can't regulate it. And if we can create those avenues, then you win. We don't need to work. We don't have to depend on them. We can solve it on our own.
So pay attention, Joe. I'm going to give you the floor now because I want to give you a couple other opportunities to talk about some solutions. Pay close attention because a lot of the time I focus here on some of the negative aspects. I also try to give you some solutions, but pay extra close attention right now because here are some of the solutions that you can do yourself right now and take action and stand up.
Well, everyone talks about building the roads and who's going to build the roads. Well, the same people will be building the roads. It's just not going to be, funneled our money through the government, and we technically already pay for it by the amount of use we put on our cars. When we buy gas, a little bit of portion of that goes to a fund which pays for the roads. But I don't want government to do it because they always take a portion. However, since you've already we already pay for the roads, because not by consent, but we also deserve our free parking. And when you're parking downtown, especially when you're going to government facilities, say you have to go to a government building such as the court, which they make you stay in there much longer than what the meters can even allow. So you have to have somebody run in and out, and they use that for their advantage for sure. I mean, I remember I've gone to court several times. Actually, it's been in Attleboro where I've gotten extra tickets by going into the court. So it was like unavoidable, and there's no parking. You have to pay for parking. It's all
because Rhode Island and Massachusetts, they're in debt. They have no way of recuperating this money, so they're taxing us to park on the same streets that we've already paid for in the first place. Yep. We're coming up on a break in about a minute or two. Yeah, before you do that, also please plug the best places, your websites, the articles, places for people to get in touch with you.
Well, I would check out Open Minds Alliance and Community Response. We do a lot of good things there with Freedom of Information. And then there's the Rhode Island Accountability Act. They handle the app reports, which is really interesting.
And why don't you shout out the article that you did the other day? Him and I were last Wednesday at the State House. RIPTA was, before in Rhode Island it used to be free if you were elderly, disabled, or extremely poor to just get on the bus, and now they've increased that. This is another way where they're stealing money from the poor people. They're not making 38 studios give all that money back. They're not taking it from anywhere else. They're not they're not forced to be fiscally responsible and balance the budget themselves. No, they're taking it from the homeless people and the elderly and the disabled, which is great. So Joe and I were there to cover that, and Joe did a really great article where he interviewed our good friend Sal Caiozo, who's also a member of the Open Minds Alliance. He also covered some of the local media there, the protesters. He also caught some local representatives on tape. I'm going to talk about that on the other side of the break. But shout out that article, and right before we go to break, any other place to find you, Facebook or whatever.
If you go to communityresponse.ri.com, you'll find all my latest articles, and I should have them updated consistently. So
yeah, so check out communityresponse.ri.com. While we go to break, we're going to break. I'm at Twitter at Will_Turbitt, Turbitt. Facebook, Will Turbitt. YouTube /Demand the Truth. Check us out, 990WBOB.com. Renegade Radio, Demand the Truth. We will be right back. Final segment.
So we'll save the two big ones.
We'll talk about cell phone one first.
But by the end of the show, we hate our own.
I can segue into that with the Robin Hood.
Okay, then we'll talk about Robin Hood first.
Yo, we hate our own opinion worse than
because then I'll be like, no, announce it on the cell phone one, and that's an interesting app to check out.
990WBOB.com. There are like W's. Mondays at 9.
That way we can keep talking to Robin Hood.
Yeah, roll over and go to sleep.
You know? Sometimes, I heard a cigarette.
And I accept encrypted currency.
Dear Journal, today I went back in time. I went to the Shelter Arcade Bar. I tasted some crafty brews, but that wasn't the best part. Vintage video games, late 80s, early 90s, really made me stay. But the reason I'm going back is the food. I couldn't believe it. The Shelter Arcade Bar has food, and it's delicious. They have everything.
I'm trying to not pay attention to it.
Like the Angry Bird, buffalo chicken, bacon,
and banana peppers,
the
Mr.
Italian
Fox?
plumber with tomato sauce, mushrooms, green and red peppers. Oh, my mouth is watering.
I gotta make sure I say this guy's name.
They also have apps, snacks, and all sorts of good stuff. Located in Olneyville at 111 Dyke Street. I know, Dyke Street. In Providence, I will definitely be visiting the Shelter Arcade Bar again.
Give a listen to the Rotunda on 990WBOB.com.
Yeah, you pulled pretty well. I would have to agree.
Virgil
Now, buy him a drink
Baduva.
at the Loser Circle.
You'll find information here that you just don't get anywhere else.
We go on record with you saying that, sir.
I'm Scott Rotunda, and I deliver my own unique style of shoot from the lip, anger both sides of the aisle analysis that will keep you coming back for more.
How is this guy? I don't even know who this guy is. Name one stat that I have made up. We're in the imaginary universe.
The action is only heard here, live and on demand on 990.
It's quite possible we do.
That's right, and live.
Well, I don't know whether you know this or not.
The PAL
990.
That's what those 4D people think.
I'm a guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
Lennon said,
Reality
honest.
is the universe is a
You give me
hologram.
a tuber, I'll get you something out of
Just
it.
moronic commentary and stupid sound effects, and it's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense.
That's cute. I remember when I had my first beer.
The cafe.
It's in all the papers.
The pal.
And every time I meet somebody here, the big question is, do I know you?
You certainly don't, pal.
Mention Chico wishes he was back selling tacos in Tijuana right
The
now.
cafe has returned to the 990 WBOB airwaves, hosted by me, the pal. Check out the podcast whenever you like, right here on the home for everything you need. 990 WBOB.com.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
990WBOB.com.
All right, final segment, Demand the Truth. And we got some big guests coming up the next couple weeks. Make sure you stay tuned to the Rotundo with Scott Rotundo right after this show. But the next couple weeks, Demand the Truth, every Monday at 7 p.m. You can always check us out on the Pastcast, 990WBOB.com. We got some really big guests. We got whistleblowers from the Underwear Bomber. We've got X-Patch. And we have a very, very big guest. We have one of the biggest, if not the biggest, CIA whistleblower of all time going to be on this show the day before his book comes out. It's going to be very, very crazy. And we're going to get inside his head and inside the CIA. So I've already been cooking up questions for this dude for weeks now. And now I wanted to talk to Joa about Robin Hooding. We're talking to Joe Orga from Community Response RI and the Open Minds Alliance. Yes, all the things he does. Another thing that he's into is Robin Hooding. Now, are you getting into Robin Hooding because you like the historical stuff, or is it the tights? What is it?
Well, first off, I want to say, since we've already paid for the roads, that we deserve that free parking. So
what is Robin Hooding?
Well, my idea is to anticipate where the parking enforcers are going, and make sure that the meters are up to date and have time on them, so no one gets a ticket. And I'm following within the guidelines, and so I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So what are the guidelines? As far as anybody can just go up to a meter and pay it. Okay, so there are different guidelines, I guess, depending on what city and what state you're going to be in. So that's going to vary.
Right,
so
right.
I would
suggest people looking up.
To look up your own local laws.
In Providence, it's interesting what they have in Providence. So
we'll leave it at that for sure. But as far as Robin Hooding, and I heard some rumbling downstairs. I think that might be the Rotunda creeping up on us. I'm not sure, but make sure you guys stay tuned for that next. But Robin Hooding. Now, these are, like you were saying earlier, these are outside downtown where it'd be the parking for an hour or two, and you're in court. You gotta wait at least 4 hours before your name's called. There's like 2 hours where they're just chilling in the back.
Or if they switch you,
they're just hanging out, drinking in the back. Yeah, it's so messed up. There's no way you could do that in the first place. It's all a game. And on top of that, like you said, the damn streets that we're parking on outside of, we pay for them. Those are our streets anyway. We don't need.
Right. And
whose streets?
Our streets, I guess. I don't want.
Sorry. I made you do it. Gotcha.
You're reminding me of Occupy days.
Back in the day.
Anyways, so that's one thing I'm going to do, and I hope people save their money and spend it at businesses, and those businesses thrive, and maybe they.
And that's another aspect that people don't think about. People just think about, it hurts the poor slaves' pockets that have to pay.
But
what about the local
enforcers and the judges and the court sheriffs? Oh, so sorry.
And it's already difficult enough to start your own local business if you want to get a liquor license, and you have to get a phone line license and a license to operate a cashier, and they all do this. And then on top of that, people can park for half hour, 45 minutes out front of your establishment, or they're towed. How is this at all conducive to local business?
Well, see, that's what I'm doing is I'm asking local businesses and anyone in the area if they want to donate to my cause, and I'll convert it into quarters and I'll follow them around. And I'm hoping local businesses are willing to help their customers out. So, and I'm willing to help everybody out.
Well, that's a very commendable, amazing thing.
Well, I just want to say that I've already had Steve, the parking enforcer. He's famous for being on Parking Wars. I already have him already saying to me, "Oh yeah, go ahead. It makes my job easier." And he offered to buy me a coffee and everything. This was happening right on the street. He was telling me to put quarters in the meters. So, I mean, from the horse's mouth, they want me to do this.
Oh, yeah, well, at least he does. So, also, I want to get into, before, I think maybe even Tyler Salk might be pulling quadruple duty to come back over. If not, I pulled a segue out of my hat earlier for him, and it was an amazing segue. We have to go back and listen to the tape, but it was Aaron Hernandez into the Illuminati. It was all factual, weird.
Aaron Hernandez isn't in the Illuminati. He's in the grave. Will be sensitive.
Oh, well, yeah. No, I'm being as sensitive as you can on Demand the Truth. But before we finish up, and Tyler is the one that's teaching me about transitioning, and I'm talking about on the radio. I'm not talking about to any of the 79 genders out there. But tell us about Cell 411.
Okay, so I'm going to be announcing my Robin Hooding as I do it on Cell 411, and I'll live stream from there a couple times, using my data. But Cell 411 is an app that you can send out emergency alerts if you're getting pulled over, if you see criminal activity, if you have a medical problem, if, let's say, you've got a flat tire, you can send out specific alerts for certain things. Or you can tell the world that you're cop blocking, and you can go...
Now, that's amazing, but we have a couple minutes left. What is cop blocking?
Cop blocking is going out and holding police accountable with cameras.
And I believe there's other ways to do that too, as far as like white boards or dry erase boards. Tell me about that.
Sure, you can. I've done this in the past where I was filming, but my friend was up the street or further down the street, and he was holding a sign up saying, "Turn here, cop ahead." And so we filmed everyone, giving reaction to what we were doing, and we got mostly positive. We did get the police called on us, but it was all fine. It was fine. They were threatening me to hold me overnight
because somebody
naturally
has to watch. Somebody has to watch the watchers and hold these people accountable. And it's not just police; it's all these other people. We have to hold everybody accountable. That's something that Joe taught me. Joe, again, shout out your websites and the best place to reach you. And Joe is also going to be having an upcoming show himself debuting on YouTube soon. But before we go, plug all the places for people to donate and reach you.
Okay, so if you go to Community Response, that's where you can donate. There's a communityresponse.ri.com/donate. And it'll go directly to my PayPal, and I'll convert that into quarters and other means that I need to get this thing going. And also check out our Facebook page, Open Minds Alliance. We share some fun things and some serious things and just things to keep an open mind about.
Yeah, that's all we're about, keeping open mind. And we'll be at the DCYF Wiley Center, DCYF Reform there. Like I said, the next 2 weeks, I've got some really, 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 really big guests coming up. CIA whistleblower, and we have Tyler dropping off from Psycho Sports. Before we do that, we got 1 second left with Joe Orger. What's your final piece?
I was going to say, make sure you download the Cell 411 app so that you can keep up to date on not just my Robin Hooding, but what's happening in your area and emergencies. So get on there, learn about it, learn how to use it, and definitely.
Check it out. Okay, so we got 1 minute left. What's going on in the Rotunda? What's going on in your life?
What's going on? I'm just finishing up school. I don't have much of a life right now. We have a big show coming up on the Rotunda, though. Of course, hosted by the one, the only Scott Rotundo. Hands in the air. We hear Will celebrating. And we also hear, Will, you told me you learned how to transition to the next show pretty well. All that.
Well, yeah, I'm working on it, man. I don't have the graceful, articulate radio voice that you do, but I'm over here fighting the man regardless. We're ending up the show right now. You guys stay tuned. This is going to be another spicy event.
Fighting the man, fighting the time, fighting the last minute or so. Before you trade us on over.
That's right. So stay tuned. It's going to be a seamless effort, transitioning right into the Rotunda with Scott and Tyler. And lastly, like I said, we got big guests the next couple weeks. Check us out, the Passcast on 990WBOB.com. We got a lot of new listeners, and they don't know. So I'm coming out of left field. Watch or listen to the first 2 episodes, and you'll see all the groundwork there. Follow me at Twitter at Will_Turbitt, TURBITT, Facebook Will Turbitt, YouTube /Demand the Truth, 990WBOB.com, Renegade Radio, Rotunda coming up, Demand the Truth.
How are you tonight?
Good yourself.
So I'm going to send all my Freemason friends to bank with you. You okay with that, right?
I'll give him a handshake. Give him a Masonic handshake.
Bold prediction from the pal downstairs that you and I are going to finish dead last on F.
Oh yeah, that's.
Pal has no idea what kind of animal I am.
That's not a prediction.
He's saying that for reverse psychology.
That's true.
Here's the thing. Even though you're like 35, we're the tenacious young guys.
I'm technically 25 because quantum physics proves time doesn't exist. So.
Well, he's told me I'm a walking dead man if I don't double you up.
Okay. Well, don't worry.
I'm not sure if you mean just an 8.